Have you ever heard of Candyman?
In 1992, the legend of the Candyman was born. This movie is brutal. Virginia Madsen and Tony Todd both offer tremendous performances, and if you've never seen this movie, you really should. In a world of Halloweens and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Streets, none of the big horror franchises were set in the projects. Michael Myers wasn't walking around Cabrini-Green, that's for damn sure. But the Candyman, he was. A string of sequels followed this film, none of which I've seen, and I've heard that none of them stand up to the original, so they're not really on my top priorities list. But forget about those because today we're looking past them. In 2021, the story of the Candyman finally returned to the big screen, and today I'll tell you all about it. Today's movie is a different kind of horror, and I'm really excited to jump into it. This is another one where I feel like this doesn't get talked about enough, so here we are. I'll do it myself. Welcome to Scream Sequence, razor-sharp reviews of your favorite creepy classics. Every video here on 616 Entertainment is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed the show here today, consider signing up. You'll get early access, exclusive videos and podcasts and more. Pro Wrestling Tees has the merch. As always, thank you for watching. We've looked at Chucky and Sweeney Todd and even the killer clowns from outer space on this season of Scream Sequence, but today's picture, from director Nia DaCosta to co-writer and producer Jordan Peele to the stars of the show to the composer and everywhere in between, this is a different kind of horror. This is a story of black trauma presented by black artists. Despite it being a supernatural tale of brutal revenge murders carried out by a tainted spirit, the very real subject of racial injustice is the underline. It's the inciting factor. The Candyman killer was born in the 1890s when a black painter fell in love with the daughter of a white client. Obviously, back then, this was not taken very well. The painter was beaten and tortured, slathered in honey, and left for the bees. After the assailants were done having their fun, they lit the painter on fire to finish the job. This painter was Daniel Robitaille, and these actions birthed the Candyman. Over the years, many Candyman were born in the same fashion, when innocent black men were murdered for crimes they didn't commit. In 1977, it was Sherman Fields, a man who was known locally for handing out candy to the neighborhood children. Razor blades started popping up in other kids' candy, specifically a white kid's candy, and it just had to be Sherman who planted it there, right? The second police laid eyes on him, they beat him to death. Shortly thereafter, more razor blades were discovered in the candy of other children, proving without a shadow of a doubt that someone else had been responsible all along. The tragic end to Sherman Fields' life thrust his darkened spirit into the hive, adding to the legend of the Candyman. This is only the beginning of the story, and we are barely past the first scene. Now, does this film get a little confusing by the time it's over? Yes, it does. I think there's an argument to be made that maybe the story is a little bit over full, but we don't have to go full play-by-play. Let's get through the basics of the story, and then we'll jump into some behind-the-scenes info. What do you think? A Chicago artist by the name of Anthony McCoy is looking for inspiration for his next piece. He's stung by a bee in the Cabrini-Green projects and winds up meeting William Burke, who introduces him to the story of the Candyman. Anthony's piece isn't received well by up-their-own-ass art critics, but that's not the headline here. The real news is that Anthony made the mistake of speaking the Candyman's name into the mirror, unknowingly summoning his evil spirit, who visits the art show after hours.
Is this real?
As the story spreads, so does Anthony's piece, Say My Name. His psyche falls into a downward spiral and his body follows suit as the wound from the bee sting festers. Anthony's girlfriend Brianna can see the change in his behavior, as well as the darkness injected into his work. Anthony doesn't know it, but these paintings are all portraits of men trapped within the hive. A meeting with the art critic who disparaged his work is cut short when Anthony fails to see himself in the mirror. In his place is the gnarled corpse of Sherman Fields. Seconds after his departure, the critic meets her demise. With Anthony's entire body breaking down from the bee sting, things aren't looking good at all. When he goes missing, Brianna puts the pieces together that this all started after Anthony learned of the Candyman from William Burke. Burke was expecting Brianna. He kidnaps her and reveals that he was the boy from 1977 whose startled scream alerted the police to Sherman Field's location. Burke intends to unleash the entirety of the hive as a twisted form of revenge against the forces of oppression, with Anthony taking the fall for everything that's happened. Yeah, Burke has totally lost it. Brianna takes him out, but when the police arrive, they kill Anthony the second they open the door. Having jumped the gun and in dire need of covering their tracks, the lead detective insinuates that if Brianna doesn't go along with the story that Anthony left police no choice but to fire on him, they'll get her thrown in jail as his accomplice. Brianna speaks the Candyman's name into the rearview mirror, and Anthony, now unfortunately a member of the hive, washes away the filth. In the closing moments, Daniel Robitaille, the original Candyman, shows his face.
Tell everyone.
I love this movie. Seeing Tony Todd at the end, even if they did de-age him with CGI a little bit and he does look kind of weird, I was looking forward to seeing him the entire time, and Nia DaCosta did not disappoint. I left out major pieces of the story so that A, I could get through it quicker and in a cleaner fashion, and B, because I do feel that the plot is a bit overwritten. Did we really need to find out that Anthony is the baby from the original movie? I don't think so, because it doesn't really make a difference. Is it a little strange that William Burke not only seems to know what's going on, even for situations that he's not present for, but he's also kind of maybe in control of some of what is happening? Yes, it is weird, it's confusing, that part doesn't really make any sense. The bee sting on Anthony was fate. William had nothing to do with that, so how it winds up like playing into his master plan. Do you see what I mean? It's a bit much. The overbooked story doesn't ruin it for me at all. It just gums up the works a bit. Speaking of the works, let's take a look at some of the work that went into this picture from a production standpoint. Candyman was indeed shot in Chicago, and sticking with the theme of this being a story of black trauma with a black cast, a black director, and all that, I thought it was really interesting that all of the art we see at the show is real art from real black Chicago artists. The amazing score, which I wonder how much I can get away with showing you here. These songs were composed by Robert Ike Aubrey Lowe, and holy shit, do I love some of these. Just brilliant work. The flashbacks that remind the audience of the plot of the 1992 original film aren't clips from the movie. Jordan Peele and Nia DaCosta opted to go with puppetry instead. These flashbacks were all created fully analog, that's by hand. God damn, these are nice. I think my favorite aspect of the horror is the restraint in execution. We're not looking at incessant jump scares or loud noises out of nowhere. you're gonna find yourself constantly searching for Sherman in every reflective surface, and if you keep your eyes truly peeled, you can spot him. The movie never draws attention to it. There's no musical stinger or zoom, nothing. If you miss it, you missed it, and I love that. Candyman's release was delayed multiple times due to COVID, and when it did eventually hit the big screen on August 17th, 2021, it drew $77 million at the box office on a budget of $25 million. It's a shame this movie was caught in the COVID crossfire. I do genuinely believe that the pandemic, mixed with the film releasing on streaming platforms barely 3 weeks after its theatrical launch, really hurt the box office returns. But critics highly praised Candyman, appreciating the scares of the supernatural colliding with the real-world horrors of racial injustice in America. The theme of weaponizing the Candyman's name drew comparisons to the social media movements surrounding Breonna Taylor, Eric Garner, George Floyd, and more. I recommend this one, big time, and I think it's genuinely underappreciated. Check it out this Halloween season. Just be careful what you go saying in the mirror, alright?
I am. The writing on the walls. You are far from innocent, but they'll say you were. That's all that matters.
Oh, there it is, Dan-Dans. That's my Scream Sequence review of Candyman. Now, full disclosure, this script was a little difficult for me to write. It's never lost on me how awkward or out of place it can be for a white guy to be talking about black trauma, and I really didn't want to come off ignorant, so hopefully I didn't. I realize that I'm just talking about somebody else's art pertaining to these subjects, but still. Candyman is a wacky horror movie, but the themes that they're drawing from here are very, very real, so I wanted to show them the proper respect. And it definitely makes my job easier that Candyman is genuinely a good movie, so I appreciate that part of it. Next time out, I'm looking at what is, in my opinion, one of the best horror movies made in my lifetime. Don't miss my Scream Sequence review of The Ring.